communities. If you don't understand what the laws are that is motivating the police, then you are going to end up being what is known as a warehouse receipt. I'm going to read some things off, and then we're going to discuss what they mean. The courts downtown, as well as the courts anywhere else across the country, is under what is known as statute law or statutory law. The reason why they're under statutory law right now is because back in 1789, a corporation called the United States, which belonged to King George, was established in the continental, what they call American continent, the continental America, and that corporation was immediately put into bankruptcy. Now, in order to create the conditions that they can control or take back the land that they had won, they had to get all the people who were at that time pretty much diversified and doing their own businesses, essentially sovereign as their own kings and queens, taking money away from the crown, not having the revenue that he needed in his territories with the crops and so forth he was getting from these territories. They're now being distributed by people who say they own and claim the land. So he cut a deal with Benjamin Franklin, Alexander Hamilton, George Washington, all of them, and said, we have to get the people that are there to sign into this corporation and take on the liability for repaying the debt. The American continent, or what we call the United States of America, was not founded for freedom as we thought it was. It was founded to find a whole new way to enslave the people now that technology and ingenuity was freed up from the church. The church could no longer structure and control the way they did. The kings no longer could control the people. So a multi-pronged control and attack had to happen. Malthusian law came in, which stated that if the population grows larger than the ability for the king or the ruler to control it, they had to be exterminated. They were doing that in different populations, except in France. And you know what happened in France? The French Revolution. They were able to take all the people who were the surplus people and use them to overthrow the government. So what the governments of the world, or those under the European rule and under the Vatican rule, said, we have to continue to understand that whenever there are surplus people, we have to go to war. Because the way we are going to structure the world, we can't afford to have surplus people, because the surplus people will begin to get a drain on those who are set up the business. And all of that got translated over here. Now, when black people came over here and won their independence or freedom, this whole continent was covered with surplus people. That's when the Civil War broke out. In the War of 1812. Then all these wars that you see us keep going on, it's to crop the surplus people. They said, well, listen, this population is growing faster than we could control it. We might as well profit from it. All right, let's just start writing laws, taking them back from the old days, the old Roman black letter laws and the slave laws, and let's just start converting them and see what it is that we could do in order to criminalize the behavior of the surplus population. And then when we criminalize the surplus population, set up the jailhouses the way we set up warehouses in order to put goods. But in this case, we have to structure the economy and to structure the situation so that when we house people, they're paying. So what we do is, to do that, we have to take what it is that they use to create value and own it. So that's when they moved against your gold in 1913. Then they moved against your land and your silver back in the 1970s and 60s. And once they took all of what it is and got you to sign over the fact that the land is yours, but you buying it with phony money and the rest, now they got you because you no longer had the ability to pay your debts without gold. Once you don't have any more gold, you cannot pay your debts. Once you can't pay your debts, you don't have a land, you don't have a nation. Then you become surplus supply. With that in mind now, with your gold gone and your ability to use the land that is yours for your own profit, because you signed the land over to them. When you put up your contracts and got into the whole deal, when they started handing out your Social Security, the Social Security was given to you back then in lieu of the worth that you had in the land. So now you, the human breathing spirit representation of God, is the most valuable commodity on the planet next to gold. So they had to use you and create a worth. Let's just create a system of money, because you could never just keep making money. We have to create a system of economics and a fiduciary system that is flowing, that moves like the spirit, but is tangible and has the same kind of elusiveness of the spirit. What element is like that? Out of the four elements, which element moves? Water. Exactly. So what they did was they moved everybody off of the worth, which was the land, and said that the whole new way that we're going to conduct law and business is on the ocean, where there is nothing solid. If we rule the seas or water or the oceans, then we are the ones who will tell everyone else where it is that they could dock. Once they turned everything into the law of the seas or the law of Melchizedek, they turned each and every one of y'all into vessels. If you go to Black's Law and look up what vessel is, they'll tell you a person. So now, all of you are vessels floating on an imaginary ocean. But you see, when I told you 20 years ago, when I told my beloved brother Khalid just a few years ago that the war is with principalities and it's on the metaphysical level, it now comes to being when you see that we are vessels on a perceptual playing field that is based on liquid water, the laws of Melchizedek. And the people don't understand that the air itself that we breathe is considered water. Because air is nothing but a variation on the theme of liquid. So now, just to get the picture on the metaphysics of how they're playing you, and why it is that the water is being used, is because once they get you on water, because you're not a water-based creature, got to work harder on water in order to stay alive than you would have to on land. So they took you off of your secure ground, gave you a social security number, a birth certificate, and license to drive. They took away your rights to be a human being and told you that you could, with you being given little gratuities, you now have privileges, which is different. Look up the word privileges. You now have privileges to be on the land that you gave back over here to me. Now, the secret part of what's getting ready to happen and what's going on is when you go into the court is a dock for shipping. You're a vessel pulling up your body into the court, which is the docks. Now, with the pictures that I'm giving to you, so you can understand what's going on, the law of Melchizedek, the law of the ocean. When you begin to understand the law of the ocean, you understand that the only thing that can keep the water back is what? Right. What is it that you call the first place that the land contacts the water?
The beach. Riverbank. Bank.
The bank. So since we are now based in the we are on the law of maritime. We are on maritime law. The only thing that can keep the water back and control the waters are the banks. So when you pull into the court, the dock as your vessel, you pull up before a banker. The banks are the ones that maintain the control of the water or the laws of Melchizedek and all vessels that are floating upon that imaginary law. All judges are bankers. So if you got a mortgage problem and you think that you're going to get out of your mortgage, which I found out later, I drove him crazy for 7 years. But a mortgage, I found out later from Sister Myra, which is why I could have fought them, but I was going to lose anyway. And it took me like this next 5-10 years later on to find out, and she just found it out, is a, oh man, what is the way she termed it? In other words, just to paraphrase it, I'll get it for you. Anybody who wants to call up and ask me what it means. Once you put your name on a mortgage, it's almost like an indictment that you've proven yourself guilty. You signed on to something that was illegal, and you're caught. You can't get out of it. It's a confessed judgment. That's the word. I knew I was going to get it. Yes.
You were speaking about the court and bankers and jobs and stuff like that. How did that the flag time, the maritime flag?
We're going to get into all that. Mm-hmm. When you put your signature on a mortgage, it's called a confessed judgment. In other words, you judged yourself and you confessed that you are going to give over this land, you're going to be doing this, you're going to pay this no matter what. And if you don't, it's confiscated, period. It's called a confessed judgment. There's no way out of it. You didn't know that you didn't know that you did it, you didn't know you signed a confessed judgment. Whatever it is, we coming for your house.
I have a question here. I'm not trying to challenge you, my brother. But when you said, when you spoke to Khalid Muhammad, and you told him that this was a metaphysical war, see, it's not just the metaphysical war. Yes, it is a metaphysical war, but it's also a spiritual war. It is a physical war because the white man is not spiritual. We always fought in a physical war. When you're going back to the ancients of our ancestors as well, we had to fight the Hyksos physically as well as mentally and spiritually. But it's a war on all levels. It's not just one way.
Well, that's exactly what I said to him.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about the fact that the word that he used to contend with was metaphysical.
Okay. I just had to say that because, when our people hear that, they always get spooked out and say, well, we are transcending and we don't need to fight the white man.
No. We knew it.
Get so spooked out like that.
No. What I said to him was, you are strategizing with old strategies. These chess moves have been countered. The things that we're doing overtly already are seen and known to be specific moves that have a counter to them. Metaphysical war does not have a counter because we're dealing in a realm of cause. We're dealing places and spaces in our minds, and we're preparing ourselves in such a way that the strategy to attack is not the same anymore. The strategies that everybody was using from the old nationalist movement are all countered strategies. These are strategies 20 years in arrears. They already got something some more sophisticated. What I was saying is, if there is a think tank for a whole new way to strategize movement to empower our people, it cannot move along the same nationalist tracks that the brothers in the old Panthers and even in the new ones had to use. And that's exactly where I came from. But I told him it was a metaphysical war, because that's where his new enemy has learned to fight. He's fighting a Kabbalistic war, I told him. He's not fighting overtly anymore. He already has you checked because he knows where you're going. And until we know how it is he's using, where is he's plotting his next move, and if we know how much resources we have, we know who our leaders are, we know where we are at this time, what would be his natural counter? It would be through the education system, through the entertainment system, it would be through the women, it would be all these, and there has to be some kind of movement that we set up to counter every way that he would come at us based upon the resources we had. That's all we was talking about. But anyway, moving it back. The banks become the only control to the water. So now you take that and you put the analogy to it. That's why you have these places called banks. Now, why wouldn't you just call it a house of money or so? Why would you call it a bank? That's specifically because the house, the place that you're looking up, the courtroom you're setting up there is essentially a bank boardroom. And these people who are there to bring, the prosecutor is there to indict you, which is actually a bill of exchange, which he's signing in order to make money on the charge that this statutory law is worth. Okay? So the way that you become worth, you make worth to control you, is to criminalize everything that you would do. The human body is the number one asset for making money on the planet, because it has a mind and it can constantly recreate its conditions in order to make profit. Now, when you learn how that works, you now control the way people think, and then control the dynamics by which they express their creativity, and then control everything of that outlet. In other words, from the time the child is sitting in its mother's lap watching television, it is being programmed that there are only certain things that they can do. They can go into music business, they can go into playing basketball, football, they can go into politics, they can go into all these things, but all of them already have their thresholds. Everything in society already has its locks, stop gaps, its toll booths, everything. The problem is we do not have any creative thinking to get beyond that. And when we start getting into the metaphysical, they now have everything structured in such a way that the Bible, the new Bible, is the UCC. And how you can creatively interpret the UCC in order to navigate the seas. Now, just to run down the information very quickly. The courts operate under statutory law. A statute, according to Black's Law's Dictionary, is a kind of a bond. A bond. Again, the words that they use has to do with you being a slave. When you bonded or you have been bound, B-O-U-N-D, is short for the bounding you. It's a kind of bound. But the bound and the bonding and the bounding is an obligation of record. In other words, a bond is an obligation of record, something you promised to do. So all of the laws of the UCC are statutory laws, so that whenever you are charged with one of those laws, you are bound by an obligation to pay whatever it is that it is worth. So no longer is there anything about you crying for justice. There is no justice, there is no law, because what has happened is the Caucasoid, the cracker, under manifest destiny, says that he now controls nature. Therefore, if whoever controls nature controls natural law, And if I supersede natural law, if I am controlling natural law, I will set up how that natural law will operate under my jurisdiction, under my watch. So he now sets up the UCC. And that UCC is essentially the so-called the Uniform Commercial Code. Uniform meaning this is the way the world will run. Commerce, that is the way we're going to run. Code, meaning the secrets to decipher. So, statutory law, and I'm giving you little surface things. I can't give you, and this is another thing I was going to qualify, and I told my brother Sonnet I was going to qualify it. I hope everybody is not thinking that because they see in this tape that they can call me up and ask me or anyone else like Sister Myra to start solving their problems. Because as soon as I invited Sister Myra to come on to do that small bit, everybody is bum rushing her, asking her to, you know, I'm losing my house, my partner's in jail, and everybody wants to deal with situations and she can't do it, period. It's like, again, we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors before us and we take the collective accomplishments and just apply them without understanding the kind of discipline that it took to get those masters there to that point. And unless you do the studying, unless you do the grunt work, unless you do the sweat work, you're not going to understand how to apply what it is you have. There are degrees of knowledge that you must take on. If you're not ready to go and study, seriously put everything aside, all other distractions, to get into it the way the sister and myself and a lot of, don't even try applying this. We're giving you the surface. It is my duty and my obligation to let you know what's getting ready to come down the pipe. But it is your obligation to get up off your ass and see what it is that I'm talking about. And I'm saying that with all the love of a father and a teacher and so forth. The time is now. There ain't no reparations. That's right. It's bullshit. Don't even think about looking for reparations. It's a game. It's a distraction. It's to make you think that you could take your intellectual capital and put it over here and get some dividends back from it. It's bullshit. All you're doing is enriching the black lawyers. And they don't work for you. So understand that the only way you're going to do it is by understanding the laws of commerce. It's all about the money, yes, but how is money made? What is money? See, we only asking how to make it. We don't ask what it is. So if you don't understand worth, if you don't understand capital, if you don't understand finance, if you don't understand the way these things work, you don't understand the hieroglyphics for tomorrow. These are the new hieroglyphics that we have to do because they took it from you. This whole Uniform Commercial Code is based on Kabbalah, and Kabbalah is based on your ancient Kemetic writings, the laws of Hammurabi. All of that came from you. So now what we're trying to do is to show you how this cracker took everything of yours and you can't take away the cracker. He's clever, he's smart, but his intelligence and what he has done with it does not go 7 and 8 generations deep. He thinks 20 years, but that's the most he can. Just like he can only forecast the weather for 5 days. He can't go further than 20 years. The way he structured his particular organization. 20 years is, every 20 years they got to restructure it according to what the market tells them. And then they put it into place and then move your ass into it and say, well, damn, what we doing here now? Well, how much is this worth? Oh shit, how come it's so much? The money is not moving nowhere. The worth is not moving up. Your dollars are moving down in value. In other words, the more money you pay, the less your dollar is worth. It's not that the price of the sneaker went up. It's just that the worth of your dollar just went down. So you got to pay more of them. So they play these games with you, and again, it's all metaphysics, playing with your mind, not letting you understand how it is that they're manipulating the reality of things. And they are there. Whenever they get you into court, it's there to take your money. It's not about getting you no justice. It's to take your money. They need to service the debt that goes to the international bankers. Remember, the international bankers sold, the Congress back in 1789 and 1913, wholesale for $5 billion in gold, sold you all over to the international bankers. How did they do that? They gave you the Social Security. Now, the Social Security, I don't have all of the information to give you, but the Social Security was a bond in lieu of the debt that was incurred when they sold the United States, when the United States bought the citizenry of the actual lands. They bought the labor, they bought the land, they bought everything that the citizens can do, and they gave you a Social Security card. What is that Social Security card? The Social Security card essentially is your money. In other words, when they gave you the Social Security, they gave you a bank deposit slip telling you which bank your money is in, how much you are really worth if you were doing for yourself. Now they mortgage that worth against you and give it back to you in chump change with your Social Security check.
I heard that before it shut down.
Yeah, they're going to shut it down because what they got to do, and here's the slick part about it. The slick part about it is the reason why they went to Iraq is to get the Iraqis to get their Social Security card so they can start pimping them. Why you think they got them voted? Let me go and put this down. This is some information so that you can follow through with it and get some of the way the legal words work. So a statute is a kind of a bond or an obligation of record. It is an abbreviation for statute merchant or statute staple in old law. Statute merchant, the definition of a statute merchant is a security for a debt acknowledged to be due. And it's entered into before a chief magistrate of some trading town, pursuant to the statute 13 Edward D. Mercantiboreus or Mercatorius. Now, states that not only, now check this out, the Mercatorius, this is the word Mercatorius, this is where it comes from. Mercatorius states that not only the body of the debtor can be imprisoned and his goods seized in satisfaction for the debt, his lands could also be delivered to the creditor till out of the rents and profits of the debt that your debt is satisfied. It's called a pocket judgment. In other words, I can lock you down until the debt is paid, and that's what they do to the prisoners. They assign a specific worth to his crime and say that worth is what you owe. Now, instead of, in the old days when it was law, you paid with time. But remember when they said, hell, time is money. Nobody knew what that meant. Well, time is money only because they assign the time now to be a certain amount of time. They give you, they say, well, how much are you doing 5 to 10 in Attica? Well, what does that mean? The 5 to 10 years is the amount of money that they're going to take out of your exemption priority account that's in your Social Security. Now, if anybody here has a Social Security card, take it out. You got one? Y'all got one, right?
Yeah, I got one.
All right, get it out. It's all right. As a matter of fact, that you need. Everybody said, well, I'm going to give up my Social Security card. I didn't know no better, and I did it. But I can always go back and claim it because they're still using it. Every place you had a job, how many jobs somebody here, how many jobs you could say you had on average?
50.
How many you got about 50 jobs. You got about 10 jobs. You? About 10. Do you know that every one of the places you work are still pulling money from your exemption cycle? The employer is still pulling money from your account? Do you know why? Because the account is what, see, this is the deep part. The account there is what you're supposed to use in order to get rid of the national debt. But look behind it. Now the new one's got a red set of numbers with a letter in front. You got that? Yours is old. You need to go back. You got it? All right. Now that is your exemption priority account number. That's where your money is.
Now, how did you get it?
Now, see, that's what I'm saying. See, now that's what I'm saying. That's why everybody says, well, damn, I got money. But you got to remember now, this devil knows. That's why he ain't giving you no reparations. Because you holding on to it.
Wow.
He don't need to give it to you. You got it. It's worth between 10 and 100 million. Each card. Now, the letter in the front is the bank, and the numbers is the account.
Tell everybody at home who's going to be watching it, turn your Social Security over.
Well, that's what we're doing right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, if I'm telling them that, I'm telling y'all that, you know they done rushed and got it already, right?
That's right.
Right? You know, I know y'all out there got it.
That's right.
So essentially, what's happening now is you got your exemption priority account. Now everybody want to know how you get into it. See, it's not that easy. It's just like any top priority, top secret, guarded security installation. That's what you got to do. You got to become members of, and this is what I was talking to you about as far as metaphysics, you got to become members of a whole new kind of elite special force of thinkers and warriors of commerce.
Do the Masons have anything to do with that? Like, you got to become really...
No, you don't have to. No, you don't have to. No, you don't have to become a Mason. Anybody could do this, and that's the problem. The only problem is there's a very thin line between us and white folks because they set the structure up. We have another thing that they don't have, and that is we came from the land first. The land was ours. So anything you conduct upon it, you cannot assign the same thing to us unless we agree. And that's what the Constitution is about. The Constitution is a compact between nation states. That's all it is. And the compact says, whatever contracts you make, we will protect those. The Constitution is about the protection of contracts. That's it. All the rights around it are basically telling you that these are the rights that you show when you're giving somebody who's crossing your borders in your territory. These are what you're supposed to show them. These are what you're supposed to treat them like. It's like a treaty between nation states and how they're supposed to act. That's all. But the number one, the foundational, essential meaning and reason for the Constitution was to contract for commerce. So that is why your Social Security is a contract. But if you don't understand what that is, if you don't understand what what that is, the birth certificate is. See, that's how they get you into it. They get the mother who's there in delirium under the twilight after or midnight or whatever they call that, when and they say, here you have to sign your birth certificate. Now the birth certificate is signed up, and the birth certificate is actually a letter of informing. What it does, if you look next to it in the old certificates, but people getting wiser now, so they probably changed it up. In the old applications for the birth certificate, the place where the parent puts their name doesn't say parent, it says informant. So what happens is that child that issues from the womb is free. Has no liabilities, no stake into it. It's a free-born, breathing human. Now what we have to do is we have to now say that we have to turn it into a product.
Tag it.
Right. Just like they do when they get the animals and a calf is born, first thing they do is tag it. In fact, that's where it came from. The whole birth certificate was based upon the certificate that was given based upon a specific bull that was a prize studying bull, and that birth certificate was what you gave to the person who you gave that cow to. This is the son of this thing, blah, blah, blah. Well, this is how it came over now. When they assigned a birth certificate before, they used to just put it into a Bible, or they just put it on a name and wrote it in a ledger, this one was born. Now, they had to get you into the Human Resources Administration. And that's what they turned you into, a resource. So once you get that birth certificate, and you have to go down and get the large one, not the small one they run off right there and give to you. You got to get what is known as the long form, or the what was the name of that again? The file. You have to get the vault copy. Right. It's the copy they keep in the vault, and it's a longer one. It's bigger. That paper that they print your name on is fiduciary paper. It's money paper. So your name, when you got your birth certificate, it's a money transaction. And it's the birth certificate that is turned over. The worth is put on the birth certificate at the time the child is born. And now that worth is then used as imaginary e-money to leverage or to discharge debt in that name. If you were to get, the secret is to try to get the original birth certificate issued, the one that they kept in the vaults. And if you turn it over, you will see it stamped in all the different countries around the world, or in different corporations, because it's used as money.
So when you transcend or move on to the next round,
okay, but when we get there,
still collecting all
right?
that,
Yeah,
even though you no longer physically.
that's right. Yep, but I'm saying no. Now they'll collect the insurance. They'll turn it into insurance now. Now it becomes, that's what that whole thing in Iraq is. They don't care about they killing off people. That's the reason why they're sending non-professional soldiers over there, because they know they're going to die. They got all these huge insurance on their head that the government going to collect once they get killed. All right? So let me move on and just give you the statistical thing so we can get into the metaphysics. All right? Yeah, but you know what they do? What they do is they have this time clock where they track it by hours, and the weather systems they know starts around the North Pole, coming down from around Canada. So they clock it from Canada, and then they give you a perspective of the mean temperature as it comes, and by the time the Earth spins to that area. So yeah, they can clock it for 5 days only because they take it from the East Coast, and then they clock it by time going up to around Canada and out into the middle of the Pacific.
Okay, I just heard that from Warren or Wolf.
Yeah, I know. Warner tells you that because they don't want you to let you know what the real deal is. Okay, now here's the other part. Now here's the court and the prison system. The court works like this. The court is looking for what is known as an acceptance and an acceptor. An acceptance and an acceptor under UCC 3-410. The principal has the primary obligation to pay or discharge any instrument presented for acceptance. Now, the thing about it is, when somebody gives you a ticket, the cop is presenting you with a chance to do commerce. The idea is that the books or the ledger, they'll speak about the ledger, two sides of the ledger, and you have to balance both sides of the ledger. One side is the public, one side is the private. One side is the debt and one side are the assets. And the way they set the system up is that every transaction between the two must balance the books always. That's why if there's anything that is outstanding, that's why they're going to harass you with the credit and all that. But see, they don't let you know that, and this is one I didn't get from Mari yet. If you have a problem with a credit card company trying to collect on your monies, there are 5 things that you could ask from them, and they back up off of you real quick. Because on these 5 things that you ask them, once they present it to you, you will see that you are not the debtor, which is what the government is trying to play you off as. You are not the debtor. You find out that the credit card company is the debtor and that you're the creditor. And the reason why they're trying to credit card company, the reason why the credit card company stays alive is because people are using the system that's tapping into their own exemption priority account. They want your social security number. Once they have that, you're keeping their business, the credit card business, alive. Yes, brother. Quickly.
Same thing with the IRS.
Yeah, that's the other thing about the IRS. The IRS itself, well, see, I don't want to get too deep into that because essentially, people who start dealing with the IRS, they start calling me and start talking and taking some of these things and start, I'm not going anywhere there because I don't want no nigga calling me from the jail telling me some agents came and snatched his house because of what I said. All right? Now, the primary obligation to pay or discharge any instrument presented. In other words, once you get indicted, say you get indicted for murder. O.J. Simpson got indicted for murder. Murder is worth $4 million. That's what the indictment. The penalty, the statutory amount owed when you commit a murder and you're convicted of a felony, of that felony, is $4 million. All right? Once you're convicted of the felony, they have to set up a separate date for sentencing. You never get sentenced there. Under the old law, as soon as you're found guilty, you're sentenced. The new law is they got to put you into a whole other jurisdiction now so that you could accept what the judge tells you. Nowadays, the judge knows that you don't know shit because he's supposed to say, once you got charged with the felony and you're convicted and the indictment, the amount that the statute says, you have to say, I promise to pay that. You could ask for the bond that they wrote up on you as soon as they arrested you. You could pay off that shit right there. But because you don't know, you now got to do time, and they got to close the books that day on the conviction, and then pick it up again for a whole new set of books for the sentencing.